In the part 3 of our case solving and case presentation introduction, we are looking at some examples how we use our 5 steps of developing an outstanding solution, so data collection, broad analysis, overall solution, short-term solution, long-term solution, and discuss 4 examples. So the first example would be example of a zoo, and the scenario, the actual question would be, how can a zoo survive if the government decides to reduce the subsidies? So in the data collection and the broad analysis phase, we would actually come up with some observations. For instance, that 95% of all costs are actually fixed costs. So all the animals, they are here regardless how many customers we have to feed them, we have to follow all the rules, and so on. The zoo typically have many different customer groups, so different customer segments that visit us. There are many different reasons to visit, maybe with your grandchildren, with a company event. Yes, there are a lot of given procedures, so a lot of rules and regulations. So the flexibility, the operational flexibility, is limited. And one aspect is that people come to see animals, but animals are sometimes bored. They don't want to be looked at and jump around and so on. Now, the next step is dividing or coming up with solutions. And I'm not looking at the creativity process or all the questions in between. I might indicate what solutions we come up with and what the subsequent questions are that must be answered in detail. Before, I mentioned that like a buzzword for a solution is not enough. We actually have to go deeper and really describe what are the details that are required to make that idea worthwhile and make it work. And these details are then separated into short-term and long-term. So overall solution could be that we lower our entrance fee, but we charge additional fees for, let's say, animal feeding. Here the question would be, the answer that we have to come up with is, how can we motivate customers to spontaneously buy additional things? So spontaneous purchases. How can we motivate customers for spontaneous purchases? And that might be quite a short-term solution that we can implement pretty easily. Then another solution might be that we have something like live feeds, like digital live feeds, and notification to interested customers or subscribers if something happens, if the lion starts eating or whatever it is. Yes, and maybe that is a rather long-term solution. It requires some elements, filming the lions, understanding some kind of analysis of the images, what is actually happening, and then we need a subscriber base, and the subscriber base, they have to tell us what they're interested in, and then we have to have this notification system. Yes, and again, here the question would be, why or how do customers know about it, and why do they subscribe to such notifications? Again, there are obviously answers to these questions, but that's the level of detail that we have to prepare so we can then convince the jury. Another idea would be that we have special events, yes, like winter exhibition, Easter eggs, virtual Easter eggs collection, things like that. Then how do customers know about that might be the short-term question, the short-term solution that we have to come up with. And then in long-term, it might be more the question that maybe a customer does subscribe or does participate short-term, but maybe only once or maybe twice. Yes, but how can we ensure that these events are attractive and motivate customers to come back ongoingly. Last but not least, our overall solution might be an adopted Panda program. Again, how do the customer know about that, and what is the actual benefit for the customer? He pays for a Panda, like a monthly fee, but what is in for the customer? Why does he do that? Again, there might be some customers that do it because they like pandas, but maybe this amount of customer is not enough to really pay for the Panda. So we need additional benefits for the customer. How could that be, or what could that be, and how could we make sure that the customer understands that, and what is required that we can actually offer those benefits. So we need to engage with influencers, we need to have some social content creators, and so on. The second example would be a restaurant. And here the specific question is, it is in a vibrant, modern, fast-changing city. So it also must stay relevant in this vibrant environment. So the data collection, again, the data collection and broad analysis might indicate high fixed costs. The positive thing is that the customers, they need to eat like 3 times a day. However, customers like to change. Maybe, yes. Eating is very emotional, so there are a lot of aspects, and if I go out with my wife, I maybe have different aspects or different needs than over lunch, if I only have 30 minutes between 2 customer meetings. Another aspect is, if the seat remains, or if the table remains empty, it cannot be sold tomorrow. So an apple at the grocery store, if the apple isn't sold today, it maybe can be sold tomorrow again. But if the seat is empty, unoccupied, there is just no income, full stop. Yes. And another positive aspect is that the customer group the target group is typically quite clear. At least the reason why they are coming, or the situation why they are coming, and what they are requiring is typically quite clear. So the overall solution that we are basically might come up with is something like a loyalty program in terms of bring a friend. Yes. Now, what we have to answer to make that program work is basically, how can we collect points? So how often can we bring a friend? What is a friend? Can we bring the same friend twice? And how can we spend the point? What is in it for us that we bring a friend? Yes, do we get a discount on the meals? Do we get a free coffee? Do we get advanced seating? Yes, and again, it can be many, many things. Yes, but it must be very detailed, very clear. How can we collect points? How can we spend coins? We could think of a franchising option, or creating some kind of restaurant chain. Again, that might be rather long-term. There might be no short-term solution to that. And the question would be, what is the real unique offering? Yes, so what can we learn from companies like McDonald's? How can we make that successful? And again, just throwing out, well, we make a franchise. That's not a solution. That's a really, really rough idea. The solution is to then narrow it down and say, okay, which countries do we want to go to? Why? Where is franchising simple? Where do we have an entrepreneurial population? Because franchises need store managers which are really entrepreneurial. Or we could say we are trying to establish a group of different restaurants. Then again, rather long-term solution might be, what are the actual synergy effects? Can we move customers through the restaurants over time? Can we purchase our product significantly cheaper? We could say that the overall solution would be something like offering additional services, things like music, entertainment events, like a combination with a zoo, for instance, as we have seen before. So here the question would be, how do customers know? Again, that's largely a marketing question. and what we have seen before with the zoo, how can we uh, continuously offer events that are attractive to the customers. So the ongoing offering development is definitely something that we have to answer how we can do that. And again, there are tons of options as we can partner with different entertainment sectors. Yeah, events. So we actually bring our restaurant to certain events. Then the question would be, how do customers know about us being there? So this is the first time that we are basically changing our location. And typically the events are organized by partners, and we must be very carefully selecting the partner. Why does the partner want to work with us? What is in for the partner? What is in for us? And how can we protect ourselves from potentially negative images that the partner might have? And last but not least, we could say that we change our restaurant every 10 years. Maybe we change the menu more often, but we change the layout of the restaurant, the interior design of the restaurant every 10 years. Again, how do customers know about it? So if the customer hasn't come back for 3 years, how does he know that now we have a new interior design? And maybe more importantly, also more difficult, I believe that the restaurant somehow must preserve the old. We cannot reinvent the whole restaurant every 10 years. So how can we balance, or what is the right balance between preserving the old and bringing in new things? And again, here we have to answer certain questions in detail, like how often do we change it? Yes, how does it look like? How do we try to attract like the younger customers that are moving up into our age segment? Yes, similar to the questions that we ask for IKEA going to Saudi Arabia, for instance, or the pop-up store. How can we actually make that work? Bottled water company, that's the next example. So bottled water company is actually a matured market, and it's not only matured, it's also saturated commodity market. Now, our data collection and broad analysis might lead to the red findings, things like economies of scope. Big is beautiful. Positive, there is a recurring need, so people need to drink water all the time. However, there is high competition, and currently there is little differentiation. Water, if you're thirsty, most of the water is very, very alike. Yes. So solutions that we could come up with would be like different flavors, different tastes. Yes. Then the question would be, which ones? How often do we change? For what occasions? So for instance, like special offerings like O2 water for gyms. And the fundamental question is, how can we reach enough customers? So if we offer 10 different flavors, which customer segments are interested in those flavors? And how can we make sure that we are not entering niche markets without the big enough customer base to pay off for the additional expenses that we have? So we could partner for a shelf space, which basically means we are the exclusive water supplier for a restaurant or for an event or concert. Short term, there is always a price for such partnerships, what is in for each party. Yeah. The long-term questions, or the long-term solutions that we have to come up with is it enough that we basically rely on external partners like restaurants or events or concerts to provide customers? Or do we have to find new additional customer bases? Because as we all know, restaurants can go out of business, events can go out of business. So what are the long-term customers? How can we secure a big enough customer base long-term without being too dependent on these partners? Marketing and branding, that's always an option that we have outstanding guerrilla marketing, outstanding branding. That's also a short-term question, but long-term might also be something that we have to consider. Yes, so we have to be unique, we have to be fast, we have to innovate, and here we might have ideas to basically work with trendsetters, might be universities, might be artists, yes, that we can try to come up with solutions that help us to reiterate marketing fast enough so the competition cannot copy us. A rather out-of-the-box solution would be public refilling station. So that's a sustainability approach, no waste being produced. Well, here I believe the biggest question is how to make money. Of course, there is a lot of questions about how do this machine works and resupply and everything. But if it's a public station, how can the bottled water company actually make money from these stations? Last but not least, we are looking at an insurance. Yes, insurance is obviously a data-driven market, and it has a lot of regulations and transparency, mainly meaning that today customers have a lot of statistics themselves about the risk for fires and so on. So the data collection and broad analysis would basically lead to observations such as so the insurance itself has unknown future events. Of course, there are statistics, but we don't know if these statistics prove true for the future. So we don't know the cost for our operations or the cost that we have to pay for the damages. Yes. Reputation. I believe insurances, they have a certain reputation that if the customer has a problem, the specific problem is never covered by the insurance. So they have a mixed reputation. Also, customers have a low willingness to pay high premium. They typically believe that they are totally average or below average, but not in the risky area. Typically low barriers to change, or competitors make it really easy to change. Also, the competitors, they have similar products, so it's really difficult to differentiate based on the product. And last but not least, the customer understands our value or the value of a good insurance like too late. Only after he has an incident, he knows what he should have been looking for before entering an insurance. So the solutions might be something like offering upgrades in case of an accident or a problem. So the customer must not decide before when he actually needs the coverage, he can still upgrade. Of course, here the problem is it jeopardizes higher premiums up front. So the solutions, that's a short-term solution, might be arguing how we can have both models at the same time. At the one time, selling higher premiums from the beginning, as well as offering upgrades. A second overall solution would be offering proactive information. So for car insurances, the customer allows us to know where he is, and then we can send the customer notifications like, oh, there is going to be ice, so drive carefully, or there is going to be a thunderstorm, make sure that your car is covered or is parked in an inside underground garage, things like that. Now here, I believe the fundamental short-term as well as long-term solution that we have to address is why would customers provide location and activity information? Wouldn't they fear that the insurance is using this information for their disadvantage? A third solution would be that we partner with something like Alexia to understand how dangerous certain situations are. So we would basically track the customer and understand that he's getting close to a dangerous accidental situation. Similar question as before, why would the customer provide such data? Can an accident be prevented with such data? And in the specific case, what is in for Alexia Amazon? So we bring a second partner into the picture that requires some benefit for himself. Last but not least, we could try to simply build trust and build brand. Again, that's something that every insurance company tries to do. So that's rather a short-term question. Again, of course, there are long-term aspects to it, but we must explain short-term with which marketing messages, which channels, how exactly can we build trust for which customer segment. So, with the examples, we basically understand that the case question, the data collection analysis part, as well as solution and which questions we answer short term, how we answer them short term as well as long term are very related. Yes. Of course, there are different options. We can go in very, very different directions, as we have seen for the bottled water company. No matter what we choose, we shouldn't choose all of the options that we have, and we should then argue very consistently along this basically green line or these green arrows that we have discussed so far. With this, we now step into the blue process, and in the next part we are going to see how we can take our solution, how we can take that knowledge that we built and move that into a presentation that really catches the jury and achieves buy-in from the jury. Most important here, if we just explain to the jury how we came up with the solution, that might not do the trick, because the jury is typically not interested in our process, our thinking process. It's more interested how we can take the company from where it is to where it should be. And that's obviously a very different process or a very different argumentation than justifying how we came up with the solution, what are the hicks and the hacks that we took coming up with the solution.